people take transit for granted, and they should. You know why? Because it should just work. And I think that's why I'm going to remain optimistic that cities can't function without good transit. And I believe everyone is going to be there to do that. You got a local support network that's going to allow you to flex against those federal opportunities in a really good way. So the future here could be really bright, and I think our future's bright, and the whole country could be bright. But again, we got to be willing to change appropriately with a sense of urgency, and the urgency is for our customers. Why do we want to change faster? To help them more and to get more of them on transit.
Welcome to Spilling the Tea. I'm Andrew Cassidy of the MBTA's Customer and Employee Experience Department, and today we're recording from the Menino Convention and Exhibition Center during APTA's Transform 2025 conference here in Boston. If you've ever wondered what it takes to run one of the most high-profile transit agencies in the country, then this episode is for you. Transit agencies across the nation are grappling with very similar issues: aging infrastructure, funding, and being able to provide great, reliable service today while also planning for the future. Our guest today is Randy Clarke, General Manager and CEO of WMATA in Washington, D.C. And he knows this balancing act better than most. A daily Metro rider himself, Randy previously led Capital Metro in Austin, as well as holding senior leadership roles at the MBTA here in Boston. Today, we'll talk about his journey, how he leads from the rider's seat, and what lessons from DC and Austin might resonate with riders here in Massachusetts. Randy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Andrew. Thanks for having me. Fun to be back in Boston.
First off, we're at the APTA Transform 2025 conference, where WMATA has done quite well with awards. Congratulations on, Best System of the Year?
Best transit agency in North America. We won the Partnership Award for our Better Bus Big Network Redesign, and we actually won a Marketing Communications Ad Wheel Award. So kind of the team cleaned house, and I'm super proud of them. It's really fun to see the team get recognized for all the amazing work that's happened at Metro.
Congratulations to you and your full team.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
So for our riders who might not be as familiar with WMATA, can you tell us a little bit about that system and what it is that made it the System of the Year?
Yeah, well, two different kind of things there. So basically, listen, the T is got all kind of modes where we are bus and rail and Metro Access. But our rail system is kind of, in Europe, we might call it almost like S-Bahn style. So we have kind of like an urban subway in the core, but feels more like commuter rail distance out of the core, but not maybe as far, but kind of close. So we go from like Loudoun County, which is kind of almost towards, doesn't feel as far as Worcester, if you will, but all the way to multiple counties in Maryland and other counties in Virginia, and of course, DC. So we have 98 rail stations. We have about 1,300 rail cars, probably 1,500 plus buses. What's today? Tuesday. So we'll probably move about 1 million people probably on the system today. We have 13,000 employees. It's a really big, huge operation, big police, big public safety presence, obviously because of the national capital, and it's spread across the 3 states. So complex governance as well. We have a board of 8, 2 DC, 2 Virginia, 2 Maryland, and 2 federal. So very complex of how that works, both the governance and the funding. We have different operating formulas, different capital formulas based on some of that stuff. So that's kind of Metro, if you will. How we won Agency of the Year is really, we've been on a 3-year transformation, not that dissimilar what the T is trying to accomplish. We were in a really bad spot 3 years ago. We had tons of crime, tons of fare evasion. Most of our rail fleet was parked because of a technical issue. We were not back using even some of the technology from the 70s, let alone brand new stuff. Ridership was way, way down. $750 million deficit. And we've basically overcome all of those things in an incredibly short period of time. The board, the staff, all of our jurisdictional partners, we've solved our fiscal cliff on the operating side. We still got some capital stuff coming up that we got to resolve to continue to modernize. We have the lowest crime in 8 years. We're on pace for the lowest crime year ever at Metro. Ridership, I think 2 straight months of ridership growth, but we've led the country every month for over 2 years now on
Impressive,
ridership
yeah.
growth. Metro and BART are the ones that went the lowest of the big systems with the hit with the pandemic, and we've accelerated faster than everyone out of that. So really proud of that. Highest customer satisfaction we've ever had at the agency. Fare evasion way, way, way down. So just reliability way up. So just moving in a lot of things at the same time. And all of it through the lens of it's all about the customer all day, every day. It's about the customer. I'm a very avid customer. Probably last year did 600 plus trips. And I think it's really important that we have a lot of members of the team on the system and constantly saying, quite frankly, the little stuff is the big stuff. And if we do that well, everything else fixes itself.
So let's start with your journey. You've been in transit for quite some time now. You've had experience with multiple systems. You've worked at the MBTA. You were down in Austin, and now you're in DC. What drew you to transit in the first place, and kind of why do you keep going?
Yeah. Well, you kind of fall into transit. I don't know if anyone says I'm going to be a transit person, but once you get playing around with it, you realize this power of transit and it impacts. Like I tell people all the time at town halls, you work at a place that's going to potentially impact 1 million people today. There's not many places that you're going to do that, and you can make their day great or bad based on more or less what you do and what we do as a team. And that's pretty powerful. Most people that work like an office don't really have that ability to do that. So that is it's very meaningful work to me. And I find it, like, to me, cities are the greatest invention of all time. And great cities can't operate without public transportation being at the core. So I think that is what you say keeps me going, but motivates me and encourages me and quite frankly gives me hope, not just for us, but for everybody, because our human experiment is not ending. If anything, we're going to become more urban, and it's a game of physics. Transit's either going to accelerate and be the value add, or cities that don't do that are going to be bad cities one day. It's that kind of me. That's that kind of simple. Yeah, my journey's been all over the place that way. I kind of joke I can't keep a job. But luckily, I haven't left in a bad way anywhere. But I worked at the T. I did consulting. I worked at Volpe Center for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Then I did a little bit of consulting. It wasn't for me at the time. And one of my clients was the T. I got recruited to come over. I ran security emergency management at the T for a while. Did that while we had the Boston Marathon bombings, actually. So very intense time. So most of the T's video system for the people was kind of my baby. The training center was my baby. That was my project. Rebuilt the control center. So I had a couple, pivotal things that in the kind of operation sphere of the T. Just love the organization. I still got my MBTA cufflinks on doing this podcast today. I always joke, if you're at the T, you bleed green forever. And I just love the organization. I'm always going to be a cheerleader for the T. And after the T, the winter storms happened, and I got asked to kind of lead what's now called engineering and maintenance and a bunch of other capital stuff and try to dig us out of the storm. It was a great experience, and definitely wasn't looking to leave the T or leave the Boston area because we love it here. But I kind of want to get broader in my scope, especially around government affairs, legislation, funding, a lot of the stuff that when you're at the T, especially concentrating on the crisis of the day, you don't get to spend a lot of time on. So I went to APTA, kind of was one of the senior leadership at APTA. And then, quite frankly, APTA is this basically massive Rolodex. And so when it rains, it pours in our business. So at that time, I was getting recruited for a variety of things. They had no intention ever thinking about moving to Austin, Texas, that's for sure. I'm a kid that grew up in Canada. But I had the opportunity to be the CEO of CapMetro, and it was an incredible experience. Did that for, 4.5 years, I think it was. Helped lead. We won this massive referendum to change the city forever. Third, probably largest transit investment in the history of the country, and really try to help a massively growing city become more transit oriented. While I was there, kind of towards the end of my term, obviously, I got recruited to go to Metro. And I did tell people there's no job. People were like, oh, you want to leave? And I said, no. And I signed a new contract. And I told the board chair at the time, there's only one place that I would leave for. And he said, what's that? And I said, Metro. And he said, like, what, like the DC? And I said, yeah, to me, it's I don't know, it's playing. I'm a Yankee fan. I'm sorry to tell people, not a Sox fan. Yeah, I know. Their podcast is over.
Cut the podcast.
But it's kind of like, Metro's like playing shortstop for the Yankees or the Sox, right? Yep. Like to me, it's so complex. It's so hard.
America's system.
And the pressure to be on every day. And I just was always fascinated by the system and the complexity. And I got that opportunity, and that's been 3 years in July, so just over 3 years, and every single day having a blast. And trying to trying to learn and grow each day and not make too many mistakes.
Well, it is a very impactful system, to say the least, which means that it's moving a region, but it is very often also in the national spotlight. How does your time, I guess, leading that sort of environment differ from when you were at CapMetro or the MBTA? What does that additional pressure do for your leadership?
If you're at multiple places, perspective is certainly gained or context is gained. So, like, I know when I was at the T, going especially through those crisis times, I literally would say to people, and people, you're kind of talking like in misery sometimes after, and you never thought it could be more of a fishbowl than what you're in.
Yeah.
Um, and then I ended up in DC, and the fishbowl effect is just magnified like you can't understand, because the people that use our system determine so much about our country, our policy, people that work FTA, NTSB, Capitol Hill, and I don't mean just staffers, which is a ton of them, members of Congress. Like I was on the Hill probably a month ago, and I'm talking to a member of Congress that lives nowhere where we live in another part of the country. And the first question he had for me was about a bus that he takes all the time, and ask him why we changed something on a stop. That doesn't happen in any other market, right? Or you could be on the train and see like a CNN anchor. And so anything that happens is an instantaneous story.
Makes sense.
And so the pressure is so high, but in many ways, I love the pressure because what it does is everyone that lives there gets a better system because we have to be clean. We have to be reliable. We have to be safe. So it is draining, though. I won't lie to you. And I think the team, it's a draining, exhausting feeling that every day you are under a microscope and to perform. And what's the challenge in our whole industry is you can only control so many things, right? So take safety, security. We are incredibly safe. There's no debate about that. The facts, people at home would all say that. But one bad thing could happen.
Yep.
And it's a social media national story, kind of like what happened in Charlotte.
Of course.
And let's be honest, there's very little I'm going to be able to do to manage that.
No.
So we're working on tons of security. We're working on video. We're working on but we have societal things. So what happens up on the street can magically happen below ground.
Exactly.
And so we got a lot of things we're working on, but it's a all society approach to a lot of the things we can't control. So I would say that's where I spend a lot more time than I would at the other places. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're in leadership at any of these, like Phil's doing an awesome job. He's got great support by the governor and the LG, who, I know a little bit, are just great leaders and care about this topic. He's got support of mayor, support of board, and they're taking advantage of that. And you guys are doing a really good job. Like I read the system a few times here. The T is moving really well right now. Quite frankly, a lot of the resources I would have loved to have when we were here. But that success builds success. Yeah. And so that they're working the same thing. You got to be in DC. You got to be talking to members of Congress. You got to have your local delegations. You got to be working the state legislatures. You got to do all that stuff. You got to get your employees motivated. So they're all the same in a lot of ways. I would say the one extra thing is we have is that extra level of fishbowl. Again, our complexity of, we got to make sure that the legislature and governor in Richmond, which is nowhere near the DC area, so all of rural Virginia finds value in that system. Yep. But at the same time, Maryland, so rural suburban, or if I live in Baltimore, I'm a Baltimore senator or state rep, what do I care about the DC thing and vice versa? Let alone DC, which is kind of like the city of Boston, so it's all in on the transit. Not overly dissimilar to why does Western Mass care about?
That's exactly what I was thinking
about. The only difference is
we
got 3 places to do that in. Yeah. And therefore multiple governors and multiple legislatures, and they all only want to pay what they can pay versus they want the other state to pay it.
Of course.
So it'd be like if the T was all of New England kind of deal, right? But it's not dissimilar, it's just different. And they're all really hard. So I would say people listening, because you said there's a bunch of advocates listen and riders. You are lucky right now. You got great leadership, both from your state level all the way through great people executing here. But don't take it for granted, because in this business, you lay off the gas for a couple periods, unbelievably how bad things can quickly go, and then how hard it is to pull it back. So have some grace with the people that are doing all the work, but also realize that it is very hard and you got to push, but it's always harder than you realize. Always harder.
Of course. And you see that on the MBTA because, years and decades of disinvestment. Yeah. And while you were here, you didn't have the resources you needed and the difference those resources make. But then there's that backlog. It is not flipping a switch. You are making generational investments,
Very
generational
hard.
progress. And you have to, as you said, you have to keep it going
Yeah.
because when you let off, then you end up exactly
Yeah,
where we were with system.
COVID killed the
everything.
whole
Yeah.
industry, and the more people work remotely, and I don't mean offices riders, I'm
Yep.
talking about agencies, and the more people people have bad behavior, it's harder. 1 month of that, you get back. 5 months of it, harder. A year and a half, 2 years, oh my God, right? It's so hard. Rehire, train, do all that kind of work, so much specialty work. And take the T, like when I was here, we would beg. We mostly only could get away with one weekend diversion.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Yeah.
it. Here, it was like, we're shutting the whole thing down for like 30 days.
Yeah.
Rock and roll and get it done. But the things that customers want to see are the things that actually, in one way, the hardest to get delivered. Because the other things they don't really care as much about. So like a pump room.
Yeah. Pump
rooms are so important at an underground system, or things like that, out of sight, out of mind. So in the capital program, they're like, yeah, whatever, just get it done. But like rail cars take forever to design and procure and deliver. Signaling systems, the signaling system that you guys are just wrapping up now, that my last capital budget at the T, we got money in there to approve and start moving that forward. I've been the T since, what did I leave, 2017. So that was my last budget, had signal money that's now getting, that's how long this stuff takes.
Yeah.
And yeah, we all as an industry got to figure out how to execute a lot faster and better. There's no getting around that. I'm not suggesting otherwise. COVID had a big impact on that. But the big stuff that matters, which is safety, frequency, reliability, take bodies and predictable money over multiple budget cycles. And the more if it's a roller coaster, harder it is to implement. So now I'm really happy to see where the T is right now. It's on a really good path, and I hope everyone keeps pushing hard.
Absolutely. Now, you kind of touched on it, but again, you're dealing with being on Capitol Hill, and at the same time, you are a rider yourself. You said 600 trips probably.
Yeah, every day I take the system. Yeah.
How does that impact your leadership style? So, again, Phil Lang at the MBTA, he is also a daily rider. I think that's phenomenal. I myself am a daily rider. And you can always tell when you're talking to someone who's speaking of a transit agency, but who does not use that transit agency.
Yeah.
What
you
do you
sniff
think?
That out pretty fast.
Exactly.
Usually, yeah.
What do you think that experience of actually using your system on the daily has, and how does that impact how you're able to lead WMATA?
I mean, I think it's a really big deal, especially at these big systems.
Yep.
And listen, it doesn't mean you can never be in a car. Like we got some transit advocates that don't realize that like we need people in cars too, right? Like in delivery vehicles and other things, right? There is a balance on how the world works, and not every trip is a transit trip. There's some, like if I'm in the seaport right now and I want to get to like a far hard place to reach in like Groton, and it's 9:00 on Sunday, I'm taking a car, for obvious reasons, right? But we want is tons of people to use the system, especially where transit works better than cars for those trips, right? And to do that, you got to care about the little things. So again, safety, frequency, reliability, big deal. But like I care about digital signage, right? I care about cleanliness. I care about police officers not staring at their phones and interacting with customers, right? I care about station ambassadors not standing in groups and staring at their phones and talking to customers, right? Elevators and escalators have to work, right? Not just from accessibility point of view only, but there's an optics of like, if you don't care about that stuff, you can't, if you can't run the elevator and escalator, how do you run the trains? And makes people think that way. So on and on and on, all the little stuff every day. So the way I'm on the system, I never am critical to anyone in the system. That's can't lead that way. The number one thing is, how you doing? How's it going? What do you need? And how can I help you? Right? Because at the end of the day, a station manager, a bus operator, what's really funny I find is I'll get on a bus, and like my wife and I, we live in the city, right? So I might go out to dinner, and sometimes I'll get a bus at like 9:30, and the bus operator looks at me like, hey, what's going on? And they get, what are you doing? I'm like, get on the bus. What are you doing? The guy's like, driving the bus. I'm like, yeah, that's how it works, And like, it's kind of a fun, but listen, people in our business love seeing leadership out.
100%.
So that conversation will be back at the break room, and they'll be like, oh, the boss was out, and he's not that bad of a guy.
When no cameras are around.
It's just life. And now I'm actually the big thing, and I do a lot of comm stuff and kind of joke. I feel like I turn into a social media guy and I don't do any transit. But a lot of them will be like, hey, I want to be on Twitter. I want to take a picture. Because they love, the one thing I promised myself when I took this agency over, and I did it at CapMetro, but the scale is big, is I've seen great leaders and bad leaders and how they lift their team up or how they let others beat on their team. And I always said, no one's beating on my team, ever. I'm responsible. I'm at the tip of the spear. You got a problem. It's my problem. It's not my team's. I'll manage my team behind the scenes
Yep.
and hold them accountable. If that means they're not going to be here anymore, that's my decision. But I won't let people publicly or media, anybody attack our team. And that goes so far for people that might be by themselves in a bus all day, feeling like, disruptive customers, people laying track in the middle of the night. These are a lot of hard, can be lonely, can be hard hours, jobs. And I go out and try to motivate them that they matter, that their work is honorable, that they contribute to a better society. And that's why we won this award. We're going back. We're doing ice cream trucks for everybody.
Nice.
Extra pins, all that. And our morale has gone up. Our internal satisfaction numbers have gone up. Our retention's getting better. So I think the leadership thing is just be authentic and be real and care about what we deliver. And it's like, if you own a restaurant, you better eat at it. And if you don't expect it to be good. It's kind of like basic.
And I think that, it's an interesting thing. We have a philosophy at the MBTA now where we see our employees as our customers in their own right, where we need to be able to provide them a positive experience. And, again, several years ago, it felt a lot different to work at the MBTA than it does today. The pride has grown, but you also have to, again, be out there as a leader, like Phil is, riding the system.
Having money to solve CBAs helps. Adding 1,500 more headcount helps.
Exactly.
No, all the, there's places that had decades it's stacked against us.
Yeah.
And listen, I say this, so there's people that work at the T, I'll say this, and maybe the people that don't work at the T. I've said for a long, long time, and I mean this sincerely, the best operating staff in the country probably works at the T, because the place has been so held together with Band-Aids that service would never even move if it wasn't for the hustlers.
People who go that far.
And I'm not saying everyone on the whole team's ever been a hustler, but there are so many hustlers. You go at the JFK on the red line at the supervisor office, and those people are hustling. Control center, they're hustling. A bus garage. So when something goes wrong, there are people that all in every day. And I'll tell you, the amount of battles, the Band of Brothers, Band of Sisters, trench that we went through, and the T is awesome at that. It has to make it work. And now we got to figure out, or I don't figure out, but the infrastructure has to keep getting better. Metro has had really good infrastructure for a long time, then went through kind of really bad period in the teens. We've rebuilt that. Now we need to continue to work on being more entrepreneurial, more agile, really pushing technology at a much higher rate. I want to work towards a lot more automation. Not because I'm anti-employee. I'm actually, again, just talked about it. I'm like our employees' biggest cheerleader, because that's the safest, best way to run transit, and it's the global standard. And if we can do it more cost efficient, which is number one thing we should be trying to do, and a lot of advocates, I encourage them to not just think about more money, it's how the money is spent. And then we can deliver even more service. So if I can save $10 million, I want $10 million to run more buses, so people can have good frequency of buses at 9:30 at night, just like they have at 6. Or it doesn't run Monday to Friday, we can get good Saturday service. That's, to me, the whole game. If you want people to use transit, make it good, make it time competitive, make it reliable. People will take some crap once in a while. Like every once in a while, you're going to get an offload. We're going to have a single track. There's going to be some weird thing happens, right? And sometimes there's medicals or other things. What they won't do is put up with it every day.
Exactly.
And the other thing they're not going to put up with, crappy communication. And I know that's what you focus in.
Exactly.
And
that's why this exists. Transparency.
And so what I do is, when we have a problem, I just personally here's a picture of what happens, here's what's wrong, I'm going to work on it. People will give you an unbelievable amount of grace in public, because there's so many problems in our country now where no one will take responsibility. And Phil took responsibility. I take responsibility. And I think people love seeing that. Someone that's just trying to be honest and own a problem. And we're all human. We're going to have failings. But just own them and be transparent about it.
I remember when I first came on board in 2019, again, we had the red line derailment shut down.
That was the JFK one. That was a bad one.
Yeah. And, I had just been hired, I think, the same month. And, again, I came in, I was the director of social media at the time. And I said, we have to say something. And it's like, it was a foreign idea for a lot of individuals. And people said, oh, the MBTA doesn't apologize. There's this is the way we've always done it. And we did that. We posted, it's like, this is what's going on. It is, you deserve better. Here's what we're doing. Here's what the problem is. Again, as a communications professional, I cannot fix the tracks.
No one's expecting you to.
But I can tell you what's going on, so you can make informed decisions about your travel. And that makes, again, it builds that trust. It makes people root for you. And it's a
totally.
It's a big
I think
difference.
more people got to learn that in the public space. That
absolutely.
And we did that big time. We're like, hey, take pictures. Here's what's going on. Here's what's not. If I have money, I'll do this. If I don't, we're going to work on it the best we can, but here's the outcome we're going to get. And I think the other challenge in transit, you got to, the T is a different setup, right, than Metro. So the T is, heavily, let's just say heavily influenced from the State House, right? Just like New Jersey Transit, New York, there's models like that. Metro, we are not the same because there's no one reportable body, right? And they're both pros and cons to both of those things. But I think people, this honesty thing, the people that are leaning into it are just way better off in society. It's just because everyone knows anyway. Like my first week, we had this big track fire at DuPont. I think my third day. So I go over the scene and it's all a mess or whatever. There's fire trucks and we're all shut down. And I go down, I take a picture of all these cables burnt out and it's a mess. And I tweet it and say, hey, this is what's going on. And people are like, what are you going to do? I'm like, guys, everyone knows, like, there's fire trucks everywhere. We're all shut down for 4 hours. Like, at some point here, like, you know what I mean? But I think it was just such a raw, different way. And people were like, oh, when he gets here, because I had a Twitter account before I took over this job. People were like, well, he won't be able to do that. They won't let him. I'm like, who's they?
Yeah, really?
I'm like, I don't get to do much, but they is not telling me what to do. And that's, I think it's good for institutions to figure out some of this risk tolerant stuff. And it's turned out pretty well for us. Like, we just had a clothing shop, back to school clothing shop. We sold like a couple $100,000 of our brand.
Amazing.
Which 3 years ago, the idea of that, if someone proposed that, we would all got thrown out of the place. So, that's how it all works.
And similarly, again, the idea that someone would want MBTA anything a little while ago was unthinkable. And then I just heard this morning, someone saw the general manager on a news broadcast and emailed that same night asking to find out where he bought his tie.
There you go.
So, because it has a big T on it, they're custom for Phil. But,
there you go.
Again, another similarity between your system and ours is the fact that we're legacy systems. So, we've been around for a bit.
A little bit longer at the T.
A little bit longer. 1897, still running the same tunnels.
Boylston Screech is,
there's a beauty to it.
There's a feeling coming back to Boston, the Boylston Screech, that, Jeff Gonville said to me one day, we're going to solve that. And I said, yeah, we're going to pour more water on it. It was kind of a joke. It was because, no one thought back then how this thing would operate, right? It's just...
And those are some of the realistic limitations from being a legacy system.
That's right.
So I guess, as a fellow legacy system, what are some of the things that you've done? What strategies have you implemented that you think we could benefit from in Boston? And maybe on the flip side, what have you seen Boston at the MBTA do that might influence something that you do for WMATA?
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's a lot of synergies there. So when I was running at like engineering maintenance, a bunch of pieces, when we put together the winter resiliency program and we did shutdowns, pretty significant. It was the first time. And so we replaced all the third rail, all over the red line, orange line, bunch of track, kind of what you guys just did here. But it was the only time we had to target it, what we call the winter resiliency program. Metro, I don't want to say copied, but highly influenced, and there's a lot of coordination. And the guy that had that job at the time, who actually still works with me at Metro, they built Safe Track. And their Safe Track program really mimicked our ability to pull the Band-Aid off and do some shutdowns here. Now, we didn't do enough of them, and we didn't have enough workers, and we didn't go far enough. But for the T, it was a big deal at the time. And it kept some reliability going for some years. That's how Metro got a lot better on a lot of things. Like, we used to have a lot of track fires. The only way to deal with that is water mitigation, change out insulators, do a bunch of stuff, rebuild tons of platforms. So there is a synergy in the industry of these big systems, willingness to do that kind of stuff. Really comes down to having that predictable funding so you never just go back in the hole.
Exactly.
That's all the game really is.
A lot of one time.
And then thinking about, so like a good example in signaling, we are moving to communications-based train control. The T has gone to digital signaling. And at the time, in maybe retrospect, we should have pushed CBTC more here, but the cost differential and with everything else was going on, the rail vehicle is a good example. I was part of that, CRRC. It was great, buy more than whatever. No one envisioned that our entire federal government apparatus and two administrations would more or less isolate China. And now there's going to be a big problem long term between here, LA, Chicago, and hopefully that will all get resolved to maintain those vehicles over a period of time. Because they obviously work and they're being produced here and want to be a success. So, we're going to open gangway on our trains. I wanted to do that here, but the dynamic envelope of some of the tunnels are a little more complex here. Little different too, because this place on the rail side, all the rails don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unique. On the other hand, at Metro, we can access every single part of the network. So every rail yard and every main line and every pocket track and everything we have, I can move a train from any single place in the whole system.
Yeah.
So incredible resiliency, massive cost to maintain that.
Yep.
So, everyone's like, oh, just put a pocket track and a couple switches. That all costs money,
Yep.
not just to build, but to maintain. So there's pros and cons to both of these. I think, the T is doing the same thing we really are, which is just how to lay out our capital plan. What we're trying to push is a little bit more life cycle cost analysis. Our industry struggles with that big time. So I think we're probably on the leading curve of that, and trying to say what's the best use of capital to actually drive better performance and operating value long term versus just building stuff without understanding the operating complexity and the operating costs. So, I think our business is going to keep evolving. We got to work on how do we do better predictive maintenance? How do we drive data? How do we drive AI? We are in a potentially really transformative next 5 to 10 years in the industry. And the ones that don't adapt quickly and are open to change are going to have really bad 2040s. And the ones that lean in more are going to be way better positioned for the next 100 years.
Makes a lot of sense.
I'm not Nostradamus, but I think I think it's pretty clear the world's changing.
Tune back in 10 years.
It'll be 140. But I mean, the rate of change is pretty significant.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. Going back to your time at CapMetro, while you were there, you helped pass one of the largest voter-approved funding packages.
Yeah, it's huge.
What can you tell us about that process? And I guess most importantly, getting that buy-in, getting the public to say, yep, I want that. Yes, this is a good investment. We need this in Austin.
Yeah, it was, listen, I got the chance to be a CEO at 39 years old and first time. And anyone that thinks they know how to be the first of any job they have that ever some humility, because you think
you're writing the rule book.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's some basic stuff, but there's stuff you have no idea. But the board talked to me about coming and building a plan to get voter approval. They lost 2 previous elections. The city's fastest growing city in America, multiple years in a row. When I lived there, was like 40 cranes in the air. It was like 2 seaports were being built at the same time at a pace that is almost hard to imagine. And the infrastructure is so far behind. And so the idea was, how do we have a real serious community conversation? How do we use some really good technical? I think, how do we have some more vision? Do all that, build enough trust, pass a referendum. So in 2020, so in the middle of COVID, we got Austin voters to agree to a very significant property tax increase for transit. So in the state of Texas, a property tax increase during a global pandemic. And we did that because so many people bought into a vision of a better city and a better region. And I'm really proud of what we did. A lot of people worked incredibly hard at it. The unions were involved. Unions put money into the campaign before they were against it. Environmental groups, business groups, everyone had a certain reason of why. We were super transparent. We worked the Capital Metro board and the city council. Never happened before. And I had this idea, and I took to people about a joint board meeting or joint meeting. We did that, and we did that multiple times, formed like a work group out of that, and over met in a very public forum about what things we could do, different presentations. We could do this versus that, really trying to drive the community conversation. And the people stepped up and voted. COVID obviously has had significant impacts on cost on everything. And Texas is a hard place to get anything done because there's people that are hell-bent in Texas on not letting transit move forward. And so people have been really, unfortunately, fighting and delaying things. But some stuff is done and other things are in the works. But really proud of the work that we did. And I was back there for the APTA conference, and it's good to see a bunch of friends, and it's good to see a city that will be able to get better over time because of that. It's a big deal to get people to vote. We take it for granted in places like the Northeast, right? Like I was like, you're going to ask the public to vote, right? Because we would never dream of doing that up here, right? Because it's here, you go, we elected people to make decisions. And the further south, the further west, it's like, we elected people to make decisions, and then we want to make all the decisions as the public. It's just these different models of America. America's just messy, right? America's a messy democratic experiment, and it's all different everywhere. And as a guy that grew up in Canada, And then I moved to New England. Like, as you move, you really see that the world is totally different about how people have expectations of governance and funding and trust, and why they trust things, or how they're manipulated on things, or how they're not, and or how compliant they are willing to be or not. So it's a different model. But like up here, one thing that's cooking here is this millionaires tax.
Yep.
And that is so important to what happened. And honestly, from a public policy point, such a good policy.
Yeah.
Now it needs to scale over years. So someone that's making $1 million today, in 40 years, $1 million's not the same.
Yep.
But I mean, I think it's fair to say people making over $1 million may a little bit more. So someone in, I don't know, Ashmont that's waiting for the bus doesn't have a bus every 30 minutes and can get one every 15 or 20. Seems kind of basic in society that we can have a balance of that. So, we got a funding effort in DC that is trying to finalize our final capital, and we call it DMV Moves. And quite frankly, it's a little bit the same playbook. We set it up with our council of governments and our board, formed a task force, 18 months of open, transparent conversation. Everyone now has agreed on the problem statement that we need predictable long-term capital. And I'm cautiously optimistic the next legislative cycle in Virginia, Maryland, DC, we'll get that done. We not have to collapse our capital program, and we'll be able to really accelerate our modernization efforts in Metro. So I think that's the playbook around the whole country, which is get on it early, have transparency, own the communications. If you don't, someone else will define the narrative for you.
Yep.
And our stuff is awesome for society. If we're willing to be cost effective and open to change, most everyone around the country supports more transit.
So in that spirit, and of course, since we're here at APTA, what are you noticing on the national level? So you see, again, you're here with fellow leaders across public transportation, not even just from the U.S., but from people from Canada as well. What are you seeing as these trends? What is the general direction for public transportation in the United States based off of the conversations that you're having?
Yeah, well, listen, I'm an optimist by nature, so I don't play in the gutter. And
you need to be to work in public transit.
Yeah, and I think, listen, there are legitimate challenges around public financing on funding on transit right now. Like Pennsylvania going through a very hard time, and they're working really hard. And Governor Shapiro has shown amazing leadership, but that is very hard what they're going through. TriMet out in Oregon, under very big challenges. There's some stuff in the Bay Area, serious challenges. Chicago, they're running out in about another year. Everyone has different reasons or why. We also got a new Congress. We got a new administration. Our industry, I think, unfortunately, moves ourselves to be sometimes thinking we are not bipartisan. Transit's incredibly bipartisan.
Yep.
Transportation is the ultimate. People have to move, and I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or never care about anything. You got to move one way or the other. And I think different sides look at different parts of the topic a little differently. But I think that's actually a robust conversation. So we need everyone to be leaning in. If reauthorization happens, so reauthorization for some of your listeners is the idea of how there's a surface transportation bill, and it expires within about a year. None of these have ever been renewed on time. So generally they get extended, but there is big effort, bipartisan, and a lot of really good bipartisan staff and members on the House side specifically working on this. So if that happens, we're going to have a new, probably 5-6 year operating our bill that Congress then will appropriate against. So I would encourage everyone, to talk to your members, advocate for what you think is needed, open to change. That's going to be a big deal. We need the administration to be supportive. I work with the administration probably closer than any other transit agency.
I'd assume so.
I've had a really good relationship. I've been in to see Secretary Duffy, the FDA administrator, talk all the time. They say all the things that I think are true, right? People deserve to have safe, clean, cost-efficient transit, and I don't know why anyone would disagree with that. Now, we have to deliver on those things, and they're part of that solution, and they're saying they want to be good partners, and I've seen nothing yet that shows otherwise. So we gotta, I try to take the people ranting and raving about politics out of this. Like, I don't really, I'm not being naive about it, but our mission is running service. I need their support to do that. And they want great economic development in the country, and they want us to build faster. I've never met a transit CEO that doesn't want to build faster.
Yep.
And this is a great time that and Democrats agree there's too many rules and regulations that are outdated. Republicans do. Transit executives do. Everyone thinks we need some reform around these things. So let's get at it and get it done. So I'm going to remain optimistic, but not naive. And if we don't have people talking to your members of Congress, pushing hard for what is important, and why, and how it impacts people's lives, not just this will buy 15 more rail vehicles. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's access to jobs, access to healthcare, access to education, the environmental message with some people. It's the accessibility message to other people because they're all true.
Exactly.
And, whether you guys are going to do the FIFA show,
Yep.
we got America 250th next year. Everyone has these things and people take transit for granted and they should. You know why? Because it should just work.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I'm going to remain optimistic that cities can't function without good transit. And I believe everyone is going to be there to do that. And then, again, locally, you got a local support network that's going to allow you to flex against those federal opportunities in a really good way. So the future here could be really bright. And I think our future's bright and the whole country could be bright. But again, we got to be willing to change appropriately with a sense of urgency, and the urgency is for our customers. Why do we want to change faster? To help them more and to get more of them on transit.
That was excellent. Thank you for
thank
thank you for that.
Don't ask me. It's like kind of Frank the Tank in Old School.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it's like what happened.
I'm not sure what I said. Yeah.
So I guess you're back in Boston. Obviously, you know it well. I believe you even met your wife on the MBTA.
I did. I was living in Davis Square, and got in the Red Line. With a couple of buddies. We're going to a Sox game, and I met my wife, offered her my seat on the Red Line. She said no. I got on Park Street, went over the overpass, ran into her again. I said, hey, you're in the old bar that doesn't exist. I said, you going to Copperfield? She said no. Kind of like leave me alone, loser. Met her again later, and then it was like almost a little fate.
Yeah.
And that's how our life story. We met literally on the T. Before I worked on the T, and then I've been very fortunate. She's a great person and really patient, especially putting up with me, and kind of, as you'd say in Boston, the salt of the earth, and has traveled all over this world taking trains and buses with me, even if most of the time she goes, you're such a geek. But
I think we all get that one.
She uses the system in D.C. We were on it here the other day. It's just, part of our life, and she kind of just, I think her whole thing is like, why does everyone make such a big deal of this? It's just supposed to work, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of sacrifices. The families that people working at places like the T, Metro. I haven't done a 4th of July.
Yeah.
I think I did one maybe in the last 20 years. I slept in my office at 45 High Street many a night for snowstorms.
Yeah.
Boston Marathon bombing. The emotion there. I had an employee murder when I was in Metro. And, her support through that. I mean, these things are hard.
Yeah.
And the public rightfully expects a lot, but I think there should be a lot of empathy for a person that gets up and pulls a bus out of, a Lynn bus garage tomorrow morning at 4:05. That's a job.
Yeah.
And we got to respect that people do that. And I think sometimes the people that are a little bit more entitled in our society forget about all the other people that make their entitlement happen. And so we should all just take a deep breath and realize there's a lot of stuff that makes it go. So
there's that saying, if you do things right, people won't know you've done anything at all. And I think that's particularly true of public transportation, where, again, it's just kind of elves in the night, so to speak. But there's a lot of pieces. It's a 24-hour business, whether or not service is running 24 hours.
Totally. And we're all replaceable,
always
right?
Happening.
Randy Clarke's gone tomorrow. This machine's rolling
keep moving,
with us.
Yeah.
So listen, I won't lie to you. It feels great to be recognized as the Agency of the Year. We get a lot of attention in Metro. I'm on social, so I personally get a lot of attention. Not my jam. People, I think, probably see all that. Quite frankly, I basically turned into an extrovert. So outside of work, I kind of don't do anything anymore.
Yep.
It's kind of turned weird. But I love the opportunity to represent this agency, this industry, and the people in it are just really awesome people, really trying to make a difference. And that's what's really cool.
So before you head back to DC to continue that mission, what do you think might be one thing you take with you from Boston back to DC, and maybe what's one thing that Boston could get from you?
Oh, that's because you're probably looking for technical.
No,
maybe
anything.
So again, I think the leadership, we've had great political leadership, but I will say the leadership here has been fantastic. So I think we're both kind of fortunate in that game. The one thing that I think we could both take from each other is never stop pushing on, like Phil and I talk a lot and others about, again, a gap in technology. We got to make some more omelets, right? And
Yeah.
break in some more eggs to do that. Um, you've done really well on the labor harmony piece here. We've actually done pretty well at that as well. So I mean, there's a lot of synergies of
Yeah.
what's happening. You guys are, maybe respectfully like a year behind in the sense because our journey has been probably we started maybe just a tad earlier,
Yep.
if you will. But I think there's a lot of synergy between the two. They're different, but I'd like to play maybe to get our region to think a little bit more of a water transportation. You do that very well here
that's been big
and have
lately.
expanded it here.
Yeah.
I don't think we use the Potomac and Anacostia to a beautiful parts of our region, valuable parts of our region enough. I think there's something there. At the same time, for you guys could probably look at, some of our tech stuff that we're doing. We might be a little bit ahead of you on that, only because, again, we started a little bit earlier and we're pushing things. But like just with the work you do is very similar to the work we're doing, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I actually just want us to keep pushing and stealing from each other.
Yeah.
So, and our teams, there's a lot of actually interaction between our teams.
Yeah, we all work together.
Yeah, and
it's a great
I don't know if
community.
everyone understands that. Like, there's a big network, and like you guys. I was talking to someone the other day. You guys have a nice little wrap that you've done around some of your small digital signs, bus
Yep.
signs, and we did the same thing at CapMetro. And I'm like, yeah, that we want to do more branding around that. We do some digital signage. Next thing I look, you guys are doing the same thing. You're doing something. Our team's taking that. So, there's not a thing per se. It's just constantly studying, constantly pushing. I'll tell you the other thing you guys do really well here is I'm not sure everyone that lives here realizes how good the regional rail network is, and that is something we do not have the same way in the DMV, and because it's 3 states, right?
Yeah.
So DC has none, even though Union Station is the core. Maryland has a system, but it's not as robust as they would like it to be. VRE is a piece of Virginia, but we run distances that are like some regional rail. That is awesome here. And I think your work at the T to continue to build that from a commuter rail to regional rail is the right direction. And you're at the front end of that in America. And I would encourage you guys to keep pushing that way. There's a lot of value that our region and others could learn from that. So I'm going to try to steal more trains and more water, and we'll share anything we're doing. So, but yeah, I love the T. So happy to see you guys doing well. And, anytime people are down in Boston, I hope in DC, they enjoy riding Metro, and let us know, tweet at us, IG, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever the hip thing of the day is, and let us know what's going on, if we can be better. And it's a simple thing that way. And I just really appreciate you having me on. And it means a lot for me to come out of the T, running this system in DC, coming back to Boston, and I've just so enjoyed being here the last few days.
Randy, thank you so much. It's great to have you back in Boston, and we really appreciate having you on the show. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning into this very special episode of Spilling the Tea. As always, if you have any thoughts, questions, or ideas for future episodes, email us at social@mbta.com. Until next time, I'm Andrew Cassidy, and this has been Spilling the Tea.